you're having a nice day. So in this video, it's part 2 of how to sew scrubs. So the first video, I showed you how to make the scrubs top and also how to prepare the patch pockets, which we are going to be using also on the trousers. So you may need to look at that if you haven't seen that one already. But we're going to be sewing the trousers, and so they've got patch pockets on the back and they've also got the inseam pockets, which is what we're going to start with. If you're watching this for the first time and you haven't watched one of our Sew Over It videos before, I'm Lisa Comfort and I run Sew Over It. I set it up in 2011 to try and teach as many people as possible how to sew. During this kind of difficult corona period, I've been doing live sew-alongs, so if you love to sew, then you might want to join in on one of those on another day. You can also see them all pre-recorded, uploaded on the YouTube channel as well, because once I've finished them live, they then go up. Anyway, let's get down to these scrubs. So we're going to be joining them to the front first. So what we're going to do is attach them to the front trouser. Now the front trouser, you'll see, has got this little bit, this indentation cut out. And actually in one pair of pocket bags, we need to do the same. So the pocket bag pattern is like this. Now you need to keep it like that because the second pocket bag piece, we do need this full extended bit. But for the first one that we're going to do now, we need to have that little bit cut out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the pocket bags, 2 of them, onto the side seam of the front trouser. And I'm just going to pin it in place. So I'm show you what I'm doing here. So I've just pinned it there, and then I'm going to turn it over so I can see where that indentation is, and I'm going to cut that indentation in. And there goes Poppy barking away. Those of you who are new here, I have a dog called Poppy and she barks at everyone who walks past. So I'm going to just snip in here, snip in there, and I'm just going to trim this bit away. Now, if you prefer, you could just use some tailor's chalk to mark it and then cut it. Depends how confident you're feeling with your scissors. So now the edge of the pocket bag matches. And just so you see it from that side, essentially just centralised it with this bit in the middle. So the same amount at the bottom as at the top. Okay, so I can take those pins out. And I'm going to just take one leg. Now it's important if you're aware that you could very easily make up 2 left legs because there's no right side or wrong side, or 2 right legs. So just be careful. That it's fine doing the first one, but it's the second one that you need to be careful of. So what we're going to do is lay the pocket bag on top, so just exactly as it was just then, lining it up with the side seam of the trousers, the front trousers, and we are now going to sew with our centimetre seam allowance. We're going to sew across here, so across, show it, so I can show you from there, sorry, so across here, pivoting down, pivoting across. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I can show you the stitch line so it's easier to see. So there it is stitched. So you can see my stitch line goes down, along, and back up there. So now what we need to do is clip into that corner so that that corner will turn through. So diagonally clip, not really close to the stitching, but not quite touching it, just as close as you can get, and the same there. So snipping into that corner, and that will allow us to turn it through. Before we do that though, what we're going to do is we're going to press the seam allowance towards the pocket bag so that we can prep it for understitching. So that's now pressed. I'll show you that towards the pocket bag. And so now I'm going to understitch on the side of the pocket bag, anchoring the seam allowance to the pocket bag. And what this will help is for the pocket bag to sit inside the trousers. So starting at the point where it becomes straight, so basically just at the pivot point where you come around that corner. You want to be 2-3 millimeters from that seam that you've just sewn. I'll just show you that. Okay, so then what we can do is we can press it through. So pulling that round, those little corners, so pulling them round like that and pressing it. If I press it, and then I'll show you what that looks like. So now that that's pressed, that's how it looks. So the understitching is there on the inside, and then you've got these corners pulled through and pressed flat. So do that with your other leg, and make sure that you do the opposite to what you've just sewn in terms of legs, so that you don't end up with 2 left ones or 2 right ones. Okay, so now both my pockets, those front bits are stitched on to both legs. I can put one leg to one side, and now what we're going to do is attach the other pair of pocket bags to the stitched on pocket bag. So this one we want at that continuous bit, because that will then finish and sit like that on the trousers. So you want to pin the pocket bag to the other pocket bag. It sounds very confusing, but we're not pinning this one to the trousers, it's just attaching to the pocket bag. So I'm keeping this up and I'm pinning just this bit. Lining up those raw edges. You won't find any notches in there, so don't look out for them. This pattern doesn't have many notches, so another reason why you do need to have quite a bit of experience already in sewing, so that you're not put off by not having notches. It will look like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is sew that with a 1cm seam allowance all the way around, and then repeat on the other leg. So those are now done. So that's how it's going to look from the right side, with the entrance of the pocket, the opening of the pocket, not the entrance. And I have gone ahead and overlocked as well as stitched. So stitch with your 1cm seam allowance and then overlock the edges together so that they are finished neatly. And now we're going to go on to the back pocket. So we're now going to use the patch pockets that we made in the part 1 of this video, when we made them all at the same time because we needed them for the top of the scrubs. So on my pattern, I have actually got markings to show the pocket placement. You can see here. So I've just made holes where the corners are and marked through with chalk on both the right side and the wrong side. So if you've got that, then you can mark those. If your pattern hasn't got that, then as a rough guide, well, not a rough guide, but as a guide, it's 15 centimeters from the top and 17 centimeters from the side seam. So that's your crotch seam, the curve, and that's your side seam here. Okay, so we're now going to position those lining up. So I've got my chalk marks to help me. So I'm going to place those. I'm sorry you can't see, but I'll show you in a second. So you've already pressed under the edges of the pocket bag. So you've already pressed under the edges of the pocket. So I'm just now making sure that they still stay tucked under, and when I'm pinning them, everything is laying flat. Okay, if I show you, that's how I've pinned mine. Okay, so the chalk marks were just there marking the top corner point on both sides, and I had them again on the bottom. So now we're going to edge stitch that, starting from here, pivoting, and finishing here. Make sure that you do a really good reverse stitch at the top, because that will be a pocket point that takes a lot of strain, so you don't want that to be coming undone. And if you've got an edge stitch foot, then you could use that to make it easier for you. Okay, so that's the patch pockets done on the back. I'll just show you mine so you can see. There you go. Okay, so you've got the edge stitching nice and secure at the top here as well. I've just given them a nice little press flat as well. And so now we're going to start to put the trousers together. So I'm going to start off with the back pieces because I've got them. And I'm going to place them right sides together. And I'm going to join up the back crotch seam. So that's the big curved seam there. So we're going to first pin that together. There won't be any notches again, so just line it up as accurately as you can and making sure it doesn't stretch, particularly at the point where it's curved. Okay, so that's it pinned. So I'm now going to stitch that with a centimetre seam allowance and then overlock those seam allowances together. I'm going to do the same with my front as well. So we've got the front pieces, they're a little bit more fiddly because you've got the pocket bags there, but what you can do is just pop a pin in just to hold the pocket bag sort of steady whilst you do that. I might actually put a couple in because he's moving around a little bit. They're quite deep pockets, so they do flap a little bit, but then that kind of anchors it just whilst you're doing this. And then we're just going to join the front crotch seam of those front pieces as well. So exactly the same, pinning this right sides together, sewing it with a centimetre seam allowance and overlocking it. So I'm going to do those and I'll show you them after I've done them. So I've now stitched those crotch seams on both the front and the back, and I've pressed them towards one of the sides. It doesn't matter, so just to one side. So we've got the you've overlocked it and you've pressed it to one side. So now the next job is to join the side seams. Now for this, you really ideally need to make quite a bit of space so that you can get a good section of the trouser on the table. Or if it's easier, you could work on the floor because you don't want to get yourself into a muddle. I think I'm going to have to go onto the floor because my table's not big enough. But you just want to make sure that this is sitting flat. So you're going to have to be able to stitch along there, so you want to make sure that you're not twisting it in any way. So I'm going to pin mine and then I'll come back and show you them pinned, then we'll be sewing them and then overlocking as well. So getting quite big and flappy now, it's quite hard to show you, but I've now pinned this seam all the way down here. I'm just going to put another pin in there actually because I want that to be held together. So we're now going to sew down from the top to the bottom, and just be careful that when you're stitching over the pocket opening that you aren't accidentally catching the front of the pocket opening, that you'll be able to feel through there. So you shouldn't, because if you've got that indentation, that's what that was for, but just be careful that you don't. Okay, so side seams are now sewn and overlocked, and I've also pressed them towards the back trouser. So towards the back of the trousers. Don't know why I needed to say that twice. You probably got it the first time. Okay, so now we're going to join the inside leg seam. So I like to do this one at a time because you want to be sewing from the inside crotch seam there down to the hem, and then the same on the other side. You don't want to be doing it in one big U because then you can twist and distort the fabric. So I'm going to start off by lining up those crotch seams, and then I'm going to pin one leg. So placing it right sides together and pinning those edges together. Again, there's no notches, so just pin it as accurately as you can, making sure that it doesn't stretch. Because it's a straight leg, it shouldn't stretch really, this fabric. Just be careful. Okay, and then I'm going to flip them to the other side, and so I'm doing the same with the other leg, but I'll have to sew it from this way, just so I keep all the fabric to the left. So sort of flipping it, so now I'm working from pinning on the back trouser, whereas the first one I was pinning on the front. You'll know what I mean when you get to this point. You just want to make sure that you're not pinning them on the same side, because then when you go to one leg, you'll find that the pins are on the underside. So carry on pinning that, stitch it with a centimetre seam allowance, starting doing one leg and then the other leg separately, making sure you overlap your stitching at that crotch seam join, and make sure you do your reverse stitching as well. Once you've done that, you can press them towards the back again. Okay, so you should now have some trousers. That is how they're looking. And I'm now going to be ready for the elastic. So the measurements for what length elastic you need are on the back page here. Oh no, they're on this page here. I'm making a medium, so I need to cut mine at 82 centimeters, and I've cut them a little bit bigger than that so that I've allowed for overlap. So I'm just going to overlap them like that, and then I'm going to join that with a zigzag stitch. So I'm going to do a zigzag stitch down here and a zigzag stitch down there so that it's really strong. So that is now joined. So I'm now going to put a pin in there. So I've folded it on that seam there and put the halfway pin. And then if you fold it into quarters, you can then get quarter points as well. So put one in on that side and then on that side where the pin is, so that you've got some marker points for your elastic. Okay, so then we are going to pin it to the trousers. So the seam is going to go, of the elastic is going to go at the back. So I'm going to put a pin in there. I'm just actually going to pin it from the elastic side. And then the pin, the first quarter pin will go on the shoulder, sorry, the side seam. There's no shoulder seam here. And then the other pin there will line up with that center front seam. And finally, the last remaining pin will go on the other side seam. Now for the fiddly bit. What we're going to do is overlock that so you need to stretch it as you're overlocking it. You need to change to a 3-thread overlocker if you've got a 4-thread overlocker, and we're going to stitch that like that, anchoring the elastic to the top raw edge of the trousers, and you will have to stretch the elastic as you go. I wouldn't recommend putting more pins in because obviously pins and overlockers don't always go well together, and also it's not going to help you that much, so just take your time on the overlocker. Okay guys, so this is now stitched in, or overlocked in around the top. So now what we're going to do is fold that over, and again, if you put some pins in at the same 4 points, folding it over into that position, we're then going to stitch it down on the sewing machine. But again, it doesn't help to put too many pins in because we'll be stretching as we go. It's looking like that. Okay, so then starting at one of those seams, we're going to stretch and stitch that edge down. So we want to be focusing on stitching it nice and close to the edge where the overlocking is, so a few millimeters from there. Okay, so that's now stitched, and now we're going to go on to the hem. So for the hem, it's a double hem, folding it over by 5 mils and then using the notch marker on the notch that was marked on the pattern to turn the next thing, and then we're just going to edge stitch that closed, so you can go back and use your edge stitch foot if you want to, or just your regular foot, just whichever you find easiest. So those are the hems now done. Okay, so give everything a final press and check over for threads, and then I'll show you a close-up of how they look finished on a hanger. Here they are finished. This is the inseam pocket here, so you can see that. There's your waistband. elasticated, coming down to the hem. That's how your hem should look. And then if I just turn them over, you can then see the patch pockets on the back as well. So I hope you found these videos helpful and they help you make some scrubs for some NHS workers in need. Just remember to use the Scrub Hub. I think it's much better supporting something that's organised, and then you can make sure you've got the right fabric and the right pattern as well. And then you can do all the good work of sewing them together. Thanks for watching, guys. See you soon. Bye.